So welcome everybody, and welcome Kia, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to interview you today.
Good to be here. It's great to do this with you, Charles. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, awesome. So I am honored again to have and to talk with Kia Painter, Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer for Cox Communications. And so what we'll do is essentially we'll hit on a few different categories. So it's going to be career-related questions, mentorship, and sponsorship, as well as we'll deep dive into a few personal questions as well. But before we get started, it is important that I recognize Kia. Kia is an amazing leader. She is someone that shows up. She is someone who is accessible. She shares, as we saw all the beautiful hearts that our NAMIC audience shared. She shares herself, her knowledge, her wisdom with not only the NAMIC community, but with the entire telecom industry. So I just want to say thank you, Kia, for everything that you do. And again, congratulations on being a next generation star for NAMIC. So,
thank you, Charles. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. All right. So again, for the audience, if you guys have any questions, feel free to post those questions inside of the chat in the Q&A section. Okay. And so what we'll do as we hit on these different sections, we'll stop and we'll make sure that we get those questions answered. All right.
Sure.
Awesome. All right. So jumping into the first question is Kia. So as we look at the landscape that we're in today, is that how do you navigate challenges and setbacks along the way, and what lessons have you learned from those experiences?
Challenges and setbacks. Well, I'll be very transparent and just sort of talk about like real time now. Like last August 1st will be my year in my role as chief people officer, and I'll take it on as a challenge. It's a challenge when you make this kind of career passage, particularly in a company that you've grown up with. I started here when I was 22. And so, you just think about making that kind of passage. And I remember, the day I got the role and you're uber excited. And then the weight and the gravity of the responsibility sets in and you're like, whoo, okay, I got to make it happen. And at the time, just our industry, our company, we were going through a lot of change in our organization. And I knew how important it was for me to show up in the right way. I had to take care of my team, take care of our employees, and be there for our leadership team. But with that, with any kind of role, when you are assimilating, all of that stuff sometimes starts to creep in. It's like some people talk about, and I don't like these terms, like I hear it all the time. Some people call it imposter syndrome. I don't subscribe to that. But every now and then, especially when you're new and you're making that kind of passage, you have somewhat of a crisis in confidence. And so how I learned to navigate that are a couple of things. First, it was sometimes you have to go to your network and you go to your trusted advisors. And that's why it's so important that you build strong relationships. But within those relationships, you have to have what I call truth tellers. And these are people who aren't going to let you sit in your woe is me for a very long time. And so actually, I remember I was in New York and I had been ruminating in my head, oh, am I getting this right? I'm not sure if I'm showing up. I just don't know. And I remember I was sitting with one of the primary truth tellers in my network. And we were sitting on, it was diversity week. We were at the New York Marriott Marquis. It was diversity week. And I just so happened to catch her. She was there for WIC. And we were sitting in the lobby of the New York Marriott Marquis. And she looked at me as I was doing my woe is me speech for like a hot 5 minutes. And she looked at me very lovingly and she goes, Kia, you need to put your big girl pants on and get your life together. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, can you figure this out or not? And I was like, you know what? I can figure this out. And I just needed to sort of get it out there. But she is one of those people who hold you need people in your life who hold you accountable for owning what you know how to do. And she refused to let me sort of sit and ruminate in my own. It's that negative self-talk you have sometimes. So that is one of my tactics for managing some of those challenges. You go to those truth tellers in your life who hold you accountable for doing your thing. And that's what she did for me. So that's one. The other thing that I do to ensure that I am sort of pacing myself is, and I tell everyone to do this, sometimes you just forget that you're pretty good at what you do just because you're in the circumstance. So while you are doing your thing, I collect positive reinforcement for myself. So when I get a note from an employee who I've had a positive impact on, when my team has hit a slam dunk with something we've executed, I save those things. So when I'm in doubt, I go pull that stuff out of the back of my credenza to remind myself, oh, I remember what you did, that girl. Okay, we're good. And now I'm back in the game. So you have to figure out how you are set up and what reinforcements work for you, because there's too many opportunities or too much potential you can leave on the table for just staying in the valley too long. You got to get back up the mountain. And so those are the things that I use when I am trying to navigate some of those challenges, or sometimes what I might even perceive as a setback that's not necessarily a setback. It's just, I got to pause and pivot. So those are some of the things that I employ. And it's especially important when you're in some of these roles where you have so many people depending on you to move us forward.
No, that's really great feedback, Kia. And I think that even I'm sure a lot of managers, directors at all type of levels, right? Everybody at this time, we are so at the point where it's all about delivering. And so how do we take those reinforcements, make sure that we have those small wins to kind of look back on and be able to share that with ourselves, because we do have the confidence, we do have the ability to deliver. So that's really great feedback, the reinforcement. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Awesome. So I'll jump into the next question is what strategy or approaches do you believe have been instrumental in your success as a C-suite executive? And I think that, when we kind of think about that is, when you look at just, in your daily career, and as you go through different obstacles and things like that, like what are those strategies and approaches that you leverage?
So for me, like at this time, moving into the C-suite, Charles, and the nature of the role that I'm in, I'm a chief people officer. My customers or my clients are people. And so the strategies that I use, you mentioned it, my strategy is definitely accessibility. Like we are in a time where customers want to believe in something real because they have options, because they have choice. And so for me, my strategy is to be accessible to people, customers, clients, employees that I serve. So I definitely lean on that as a strategy. I've never subscribed to this notion of being like a figurehead kind of executive, because I think accessibility is my thing. The other thing that I think has been successful for me in terms of being in this particular role is knowing the business. So it's one thing to be a functional leader in HR, but I really spend a lot of time being very connected to the industry, not just understanding what we do from a connectivity or an MSO or a broadband provider, but I'm also equally interested in what the rest of our industry does from a content perspective, because we're all in this ecosystem together. So I use the strategy of really knowing and understanding the totality of our industry so that I understand where growth comes from, where pivots might be happening, how I might need to be seeing around corners, so that I'm never caught off guard with these seismic shifts that might be happening in our industry over time. So that's definitely a strategy that I try to leverage even as a people officer, because I have to know what the next waves of talent are potentially going to be and what the potential impacts are on talent in the future. So those are my primary things: accessibility to the people I serve, and then making sure I have a strong command of the industry that I participate in all the time, day to day. And then finally, the other thing that I think is very important that I try to leverage as a strategy is really being really good at leading and developing people. You know,
Nice.
I see a lot of people who sort of rise through the ranks because they're the subject matter expertise. I can be a great HR person all day, but it's not about me knowing HR. It's about me developing the people who have to deliver talent and deliver HR for the business to be able to be successful. So that's the third thing that I employ. I want to be the best people leader I can possibly be. That's what legacy means. Legends are the people who do all the cool stuff. Oh, remember that time they came in with their cake and they did X? But it's the people who have developed other
Mm.
people that have legacy that transcends for years. I want to be that person. That's what I try to do.
Oh, that's so awesome. I think it's so important that, you know, as you're climbing the rankings, you only grow as much as your people grow. And so to me, that is so key, in order to be able to grow people and develop others. Awesome. All right. So thinking about, my next question is, as we think about, just, you know, you receiving the Next Generation Leader Award, for NAMIC, which was an amazing award. And during your speech, you really talked about, your mother, your family, how important it is, and just their overall impact, in your life. And so when I kind of resonated and when I thought about that, it was just, wow, NAMIC allowed Kia to have that platform to be able to express herself and to really to be truthful about her entire journey and how her family and everybody along the way has helped her to get where she is today. And so when you think about the NAMIC organization giving you that platform to really express yourself and grow, how have they truly been able to do that? Can you kind of talk a little bit about the NAMIC organization?
Oh wow, I didn't even know if I could do that for the whole hour. I mean, NAMIC has really powered a kid's career here. I mean, seriously, like in 2006, I had my first, no, actually before that. So I want to say probably in 2004, I had my first exposure to the L. Patrick Mellon mentorship program. I was paired with, she was VP of recruiting. I'm sorry, I can't not remember her name, but she was VP of recruiting at Time Warner. And
Mhm.
that's when I even started learning about our industry from a different company perspective. So I got different exposure and I just appreciated one, her taking the time, because I was like a employment specialist at that point, to just sort of give me a view to her vantage point. I had never had that exposure before. And so that was the first investment that NAMIC in terms of programming sort of powered me up in my career. So that was the first thing. The next thing that shaped me was really that leadership seminar that I went to. It was in New York. And I don't want to share all the magic because I feel like everybody should have that experience. So I'm not going to tell about all the activity, but it was one of the first times I had exposure to different types of development content that was more than just addressing my cognitive development. That stuff was hitting me in the heart and soul. And so I'll just share one that I was like, this is really different. And I think about it to this day. And it was the work done by Dr. Robin Johnson, who talks about she has a book about the dance of leadership.
Mhm.
And I love to dance. So she had me at let's get out here and do some choreo talking about leadership development. And it was such a wonderful way to connect how I think about leading others. Like there's rhythm to how you connect and move with people. And that was the first time I'd had any kind of exposure to that. And my only miss from that program, because of the way my personality is set up, I am wicked introverted and socially awkward. So the one thing I did not do well in that, but I did learn, when I went to ELDP was I didn't take advantage of the networking opportunity that I wish I had had. And that, again, I was still very young. I was still mid-20s at that point. So I just didn't recognize the power of building that network at the time. But then I learned from that by the time I went to NAMIC's Executive Leadership Development Program. That program was so impactful in a number of ways. And again, I do not want I want to keep it as mysterious as possible because everybody deserves the magic from that content. But there is nothing like going with a group of executives who are doing such dynamic things in their businesses. And there are people in that program. As a matter of fact, my cohort is having a reunion this July. And I hadn't spoken to one of the participants. At the time he worked for BET, his name is Rob Lewis. I got an email from him out of the blue and I just lit up. I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen him in like over a decade, but it's that kind of special experience you have. And so what I took away from that program was a couple of things. It forced me to get real with the gaps in my development if I was really going to get serious about this potential dream I had to be chief people officer, because I still wasn't sure. You know, I had met May Douglas and I had this like, oh, I want to be May Douglas, but I wasn't sure if I had the business chops to do it because I had grown up in HR and she had done multiple things. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to have the business chops. But I sat in that program with all these dynamic people and I just was so inspired. And, you know, you go through several sessions with these people and you build this community. And I had to get real because I sat in one session and I heard how a couple of them were able to talk so intimately about some of the financial pieces of the business. I walked out of the last, like we got our little certificate. I walked out of that program and a week later, I enrolled in Tulane to go get my MBA.
Nice.
So I was like, okay, this needed to tell me what I needed to hear, which was if I was going to take my shot at being, at even wanting to pursue being a chief people officer, I had to up my game and I had to go close this gap with my financial acumen. And if I wasn't going to step out of my function to do it, I had to go level up my education to do it. So I went and got an MBA. So NAMIC ELDP helped me socially because, again, those people some of those people I still stay in contact with. I celebrate them when I see them get promoted, when they move. I'm so happy. And it helped me focus on, you got to go power up what you don't have if you want to go reach and shoot for this dream, girl. So thank you, NAMIC ELDP. So I have a lot of love for NAMIC and how they think about developing people at different passages in their career so that they can step towards their dreams. So a lot of love for NAMIC. Thank you.
Oh, no, that's a very in-depth answer. And I can resonate, especially having to get an MBA. It's just being able to connect with other people at different levels, right? There are people that were AVP, you know, me, I just entered 2 years into a manager, but people at different levels being able to resonate and kind of see where you're at. And those people make you kind of up your skills essentially, right? Say, hey, I need to kind of be here. So no, that's really awesome. All right, so do we have any questions? So we've kind of hit on our career related questions. And you want to jump in?
Yeah, so here, love you, girl. Love you. Thank you. So we have, Maria Brennan. Maria, welcome. Maria is the president and CEO of Wix, our sister company. I'm so thrilled that you're joining us today for this key conversation. Maria asks, this is so great, Kira and NAMIC, question for you. How do you set your priorities, including making time for yourself?
Making time for myself. So setting my priorities. You know, it's really interesting. I'm not always good at it, Maria. I'm getting better, but I'm not always good at it. So what I try to do is focus on, and I learned this a couple of years ago. Someone said to me, every weekend, pick your day. So I picked Saturday morning. I wake up and so it's a routine for me. And I ask myself, for the previous week, who was supposed to get my A game and who didn't. And for the next week, who should get it. So that it forces me to think about not just at work, but am I missing people in my personal life who should have gotten a part of my A game the previous or the upcoming week. So I do that every Saturday morning. And now that we're not in a pandemic, I actually go to a coffee shop because I love coffee. So it forces me to go somewhere to do this. That helps me with the discipline of it. And so I go and I just say, and so like last Saturday, I was like, ooh, I have an aging parent, and you guys know how I feel about my mom. My mom's not getting my A game. So I was like, okay, I need to create some time to focus on carving out time to get back to Hampton Roads because she needs a little bit of my A game right now. And then I take that same approach to which of my projects am I not giving the right priority to because somebody's louder versus the impact of the project requires a different level of effort, or am I developing my team so that I actually have someone not only from a developmental perspective that this doesn't need my A game because I actually have somebody who's better than me on my team who should be flexing their A game to do this, and the benefit is better longer term for them. So it's multifaceted in how I think about how I prioritize some of those things because I want to make sure it's for the betterment. If it's work stuff, it's for the betterment of the business. I'm actually growing my talent to be able to do it, and I can sustain it in the long term. And on the professional side, I'm making sure are the people in my life that I love getting what they're supposed to get from me at the right time. And I recognize that this past Saturday, my mom, who I cherish, is probably going to be giving me side eye a little bit if I don't get back to Hampton Roads pretty soon. So that's my approach. That's my approach to how I prioritize. So thank you, Maria, for answering that question.
All right,
Awesome.
Charles, maybe two more, right?
Yeah, we can do two more questions.
All right. Terry asks, how have you turned any of your career failures into opportunities to learn and grow?
Oh, career failures. So one was a couple of years. It was my first time I had to do a major organization transformation. Hold on, that's sort of HR speak. So it was the time when we had to consolidate markets in one of our regions, and I did not lead that well. And I had to learn from that. And when I say I did not lead that well, what I missed was we were so focused on execution and getting timelines. I didn't take into account, even though we were the same company, how different our market subcultures were. So when you're putting together these markets, especially when they've operated so autonomously for like years, you can't underestimate how different the unspoken rules are, what is important in one market versus another. And I was just so locked into, did I just take care of like the traditional HR mechanical stuff that I did not spend the time that I needed to spend on ensuring that I had done the culture readiness stuff. And so when it was time for us to execute and hit go, I had a whole lot of stuff on the back end that came up that I had to re-earn that market's trust. And I ended up doing it. I ended up re-earning trust with those employees, but I had to spend a lot of time and effort doing that because I didn't put the work in on the front end. And so that taught me a valuable lesson, because anytime I have to do anything that is affecting anyone's experience, I put that time in to really understand. And now it's become a part of my brand. I will take the time to understand any effect on any person that is going to have to go through any change, because I learned from that, because that is not who I wanted to be. And that happened very, very early in my career. I'm glad it happened early in my career, because it really set the frame for how I show up as an HR practitioner, because I know how I want people to be treated, and it was definitely not like that. So that's how I channeled that particular failure into, I'm going to be a better HR practitioner for the rest of my life.
Oh, I love that. That is such a reflective response. Thank you, Kia. The last question before I hand it back to Charles. Keep the questions coming. This is not the last for the day, it's just for this segment. Erin asks, what advice do you have for professionals of color towing the line between taking proactive initiative and relying on leadership for empowerment to step into that capacity?
Say that one more time. What advice do I have for
professionals of color towing the line between taking proactive initiative and relying on leadership for empowerment to step into that capacity? I think it's to step into their next level.
Oh, to their next level.
Yeah, I think that's what they need. Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I will say, at the end of the day, your career is your career. Like you will have great leaders. I've really had the fortune of having some really, like my last boss, a bit like amazing. Like she writes the book on developing people, but you're not gonna always have that. Like I had one boss where I could tell she was like, you know what, it's not my role to develop you. So what I did in that instance, so if you're dealing with a boss where you're like, they're not really my partner, you got to take the initiative. But it's tricky, right? Because you don't necessarily know how that's going to be received. So I did what is called the surrogate career boss. So it's not necessarily a mentor, because sometimes that person doesn't have time to, do your coaching and development. But you use them as a surrogate to connect you to those opportunities. So that person for me at the time was a woman named Belinda Turner. I was in another place. She was up here in Atlanta, and she could tell I was getting antsy. I was like, BT, I don't know, like it's get rough around here. And she was like, easy killer, stay, go back to school, do something else. Let's figure some things out. And what she did so what I meant by this surrogacy, her surrogacy wasn't to find me a job. She found me access to projects and opportunities so that the people who had the jobs could see me. And when something came available, they had familiarity with me and they could see me differently than just the role I was in. So so if you have a boss and you're like, this is a little slow, get you some surrogate stuff happening on the side so it doesn't slow you down. That would be my advice. That's what I did. I had to go get me some surrogate career leadership. That's what I did.
Awesome. No, that's really good. And speaking of Belinda Turner, she was also one of my mentors and actually the person that connected me and you, Kia. So
that's great. That's right.
Yeah, so that surrogate worked perfectly for me. So
yeah, and I think I saw somebody put in the chat. Yeah, somebody said, "Go Karen." Yes, that boss who wrote the textbook on developing people is Karen Bennett. So I think somebody put that in the chat. Yes.
Awesome.
So shout out again.
Awesome. Shout out to Karen. And so jumping into our next session, and I think that's a great segue into like mentorship and sponsorship. And so before we kind of jump into the questions, I think it's very important to be able to define what mentorship and kind of distinguish the two. And so really looking at mentorship, it is a mutually beneficial professional relationship in which an experienced individual imparts knowledge and expertise and wisdom on someone of lower experience, right? And then when you kind of think about sponsorship, it is someone who advocates on your behalf when you're not even in the room. Okay. And they put you in a position essentially for career development. So kind of what you talked about, Kia, is that having that surrogate in place, she was able to help you, right? Really, connect with different people across the organization in order for you to kind of take on different responsibilities. And so how has, sponsorship and mentorship really allowed you and impacted your overall career journey? And I know you kind of answered that a little bit, but you can either answer it on sponsorship or mentorship.
Yeah, so both have been extremely impactful. I will say right now, mentoring is impactful from a reverse perspective. Like what I didn't realize going into this pandemic was how analog I was. And so I actually work with younger employees in a reverse mentoring capacity. I did that during the pandemic to get more digital in terms of my skill set. So I use a lot of that now. A lot of my mentors now are helping me from a reverse. Sponsorship, though, I cannot stress how important that is. And sponsorship is tricky because sometimes you don't even know people are sponsoring you. Like, these are people who are opening doors. They are expending some of their career capital to get you into opportunities that you just don't know about. They are credentializing your skills sometimes with people that you don't have access to. And the best example I have of that is a gentleman who was sponsoring me that I didn't always see eye to eye on. Like, when we were in different kinds of settings, and he was very high up in the organization, I always used to think, oh my God, he does not get what I'm saying at all. But what I learned over time was he respected how consistent I was in my point of view, that I always researched it. When I made sure when I spoke to him that I wasn't emotional, that I tried to be as fact-based as I could, and I was willing to be open. Like, I wasn't just always locked in. Okay, let me understand this. And if I learned from it, I would go back to him and say, hey, you know what, I did consider this, and this is what I was able to shift because of it. And I had a track record of doing that. And so I learned one day when something came up, someone said, hey, did you know he put you up for this? And my jaw literally dropped on the floor. I said, who put me up for this? And she said, yeah, this person put you up for this. And I was blown away by that. And what I learned over time is he had been consistently sort of sponsoring me and associating me with key things, because he was okay putting his name on the line because he believed in the work. Had mentored me a day in his life, but he believed in the work. And so my advice would be, you need sponsors because they are expending career capital. So it has to be about what you are delivering. So make sure sponsors know about your track record, that they have exposure to outputs, whereas mentors are really maybe helping you with the skill. They may be helping you with navigate a problem or something like that. Sponsors have to be connected to your work because it's capital they're giving off, social, career. So they got to be connected to that track record you're building, and everybody needs them.
Wow, that's invaluable. Invaluable. Okay. All right. So jumping into the last question for mentorship. And again, I think you may have answered a little bit, but who are some of the additional, I know you answered kind of sponsorship on that one. Who is a mentor that has helped you along your journey, and what advice do you still carry with you today?
Oh, wow. Okay, let's see. Mentors. Gosh, I've had so many, Charles. So a couple that I will just sort of rattle off. So one, he's retiring this year. He was the CFO over here at Cox Communications. He's retiring now as CFO at Cox Automotive. There's a gentleman named Mark Bowser. He was my first real hardcore C-suite mentor. And he was the one, I was able to really talk to him and have some real straight talk about being a woman of color. And that was the first time with someone at that level I could really talk about the realities of, he would say, you got to have your voice. And he was like, I'm not cutting you any slack. Where's your numbers? You're an HR person. You got to bring yours like everybody else. And so he probably was also, I had to go back and get the MBA anyway. But he was the first one, you got to realize it's different sometimes when you're at this level, and you just got to lean into it. So I have a lot of appreciation. I'm so grateful to when he entered my career as a mentor. Gentleman named Sam Atisha, who is our one of our region leaders out there. Actually, my current boss before, when he came to the company, he was one of my informal mentors. Mark Graytrex is one of my mentors. Belinda Turner was, again, before. She was more informal, like we weren't in a program together, but she was one of my mentors. But I've had tons of peer mentors. So I have one named Sherilyn Bartholomew, who she used to work in automotive, worked in our CCI strategy team. I've had, again, just tons of people who you just learn how to, most of my mentors taught me how to not be so locked into my vantage point as an HR person. That is the best benefit I've gotten from each of them. And what is uniquely important about everyone that I've always selected as a mentor, they had to be truth tellers. I didn't want anybody hyping me up. You got to give me the ugly. Well, you got to be kind too, but you got to give me the ugly. I can't just have hype people. That's what I need, that to grow.
Oh, that's really awesome. I like the truth teller. Jeremy Bai was one of my formal official mentors. And that was somebody who, when it came out to Dex and just my overall leadership growth, just telling me the truth, like looking at Dex and things that I want to present and just giving it to me real. Yes. He was actually one of the people that said, Charles, I would recommend you want to grow in leadership, go back and do your MBA, right? Don't do it as something that is conventional, do something that you really don't understand, right? That helps you be able to grow. So I can definitely resonate with that.
Very good. Both good people. Love both of them.
Awesome. All right, so let's jump into the questions. I know we have about 10 more minutes. I think from our personal questions, I think, Kia, you kind of answered the work-life balance one. So I definitely want to go to the Q&A and see if we have any more questions.
Yeah, we have a few questions. Thank you, Charles. And again, I just love this conversation. I have a comment, I think, question that says, I love your salient point about leaving a legacy of leadership. I agree and embody that philosophy. Leaders develop other leaders. How might other leaders go about helping others make that transition when this SME, subject matter expert, has been so valued and the promotion path?
You know, it's hard, but I will tell you, you have to look deep within and be vulnerable, and you have to empower your people. You know, I have a couple of folks on my team and there a couple of them are new to their role. And so I have to say to them, you tell me to get out of your business because this is yours now. And I even tell them, I might get defensive because I like your space so much. And you tell me to go get somewhere and sit down. And if I don't, you got to hold me accountable for it. Like you have to, because it's so hard when you, especially if it's a space you love, like it's hard to let go. But if you believe in this thing about legacy and you value your people, you will grow and get there because it's about them. And that's what I believe. I know I can get there. And so that's what would be my challenge to you. You might be the SME, but if you care for your people and you stand by that, you will grow to get there. That's what I'll say about that. But it's hard though. I mean, it's hard. Sorry.
I love that. So I'm going to combine these two questions. I think you've touched on them. So Charles, I will defer to you on this one. It says, how do you seek out mentors and or sponsors?
Oh, how do you seek them out? So I seek out mentors. Sometimes they just fall in place. Like if you're not in a formal program, sometimes you can just ask somebody for coffee. Because I'm socially awkward, so I can't go up and say, "Hey, Charles, can you be my mentor?" That'll never happen. So I'll ask somebody for, "Hey, Charles, can we have coffee?" We'll have that first coffee. Ooh, I really like what Charles has. Charles, can we meet again? And then by the fourth meeting, Charles, you know you're my mentor, right? And we're in a full-blown relationship. Because it's not still. So I didn't make it a thing, but that's the way my personality is set up. That's how I do it. Sponsors are a little trickier. And this is gonna sound, it is what it is. Most of the time sponsors pick you. And so what I've seen work, like one sponsor did start as a mentor. So our relationship ended as a mentor, but then a couple of years later, I was like, hey, I've been working on X, Y, and Z. can I tell you about some of the work I've been working on? So I didn't go ask for development. And I was like, hey, can you champion my project? So once he championed my project, then we sort of had this cadence of stuff I'm working on so he could be willing to sponsor my track record. That's the only person I ever asked to be, because it's awkward. Hey, can you sponsor me? It's really like asking somebody for a mortgage payment. It's kind of tricky. So yeah, so I probably wasn't a good answer to your question, but I'm very transparent, being very honest with you guys.
I actually like that response, because earlier you noted that sponsors pick you, and that's based on your credibility and your work, right? Because they're going to then probably give you their social capital in rooms where you're not. So that's really about somebody putting their credit on you, right?
That's right.
That's huge. That's a huge risk. And so you want them to be the ones to pick you because they have seen the product or the outcome, you know, the output of your work. So I agree with that response. That's very fair. It's kind of, can you co-sign on this for me? Woo! Yeah, that's different, right?
Yes.
All right. So we have Karen, and she asked, you spend a lot of time with a lot of people. What are your ways of paying it forward that you can share?
Oh, my ways of paying it forward? Like giving people platforms and access. So like, but I'll use today as an example. Charles has been doing a lot of work with NAMIC Atlanta. And I'm like, when NAMIC said, hey, you need somebody to moderate this, I was like, who's doing a lot of work? Charles, I want you to do this with me because you have been putting in work. So I look for people who are invested in others. I'm gonna pull you too, because you are invested in others. That's how I delineate how you pay it forward. It's a value set. It's not just about, hey, I just want to be connected to you. The value is, do you pour into others? Charles is doing membership with it. It's hard to get people to volunteer for stuff, and he's doing membership. Yes, let me pull you along into this opportunity. So that's what I try to do. I like if people ask, hey, can you mentor me? I don't always have an opportunity to mentor, but I always have an opportunity sometimes for a cup of coffee. So those are the ways I try to connect. And that is my approach to paying it forward, because I always want people to feel like they have an opportunity to step towards their dreams. I did. So, and I shouldn't be an anomaly.
Awesome. I definitely appreciate the you pulling me in, Kia, and recommending me for this interview. So definitely thank you again.
Absolutely. You do a great job.
Thank you. All right, the last question, and I feel like we've kind of went through some of the personal questions. One last question is how do you maintain humility along your journey in the C-suite? And
humility?
Yes. So I know if we kind of think about the environment that we're in today is, for the last couple of months, 6 months, there are a lot of big decisions that executives have to make. Mm-hmm. And so, with all of those big decisions, how do you maintain that sense of humility, going to work and making decisions, knowing that it impacts your decisions that you make essentially impacts a large amount of people?
Honestly, Charles, part of it comes from my parenting, how I was raised. Like my father always taught us, there is always someone to the left of you who needs something that you have. And so be grateful for what you have. So I've always been wired that way. And so I stay humble because in any given moment, anything could change. And so as long as I have and I don't want to be offensive to anyone, but this is just how I was raised. So as long as I have the blessing, it's my responsibility to care for it and share it with others. So that is how I stay humble. It's that DNA that I have and what my mom and my dad taught me. And it's, you have this blessing, you share it with others, and you pay it forward.
Awesome. Wow, that was just the realness of that response is amazing. So, but it's about those morals and values that you were raised with, which you continue to have those, and you keep those morals and values as you continue your work. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
I think that was the last question that we have. I think we're right at 4:59. So I will turn it over to Ann, but I would like to say again, Kia, thank you for the opportunity to be able to
Absolutely.
have a discussion, a great dialogue with you about your career journey. You have been amazing to myself, a great mentor, as well as to many people on this call. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity. So,
Pleasure
and thank
to be
you,
here
NAMIC
with you.
National.
And thank you, NAMIC, for this opportunity. Again, this isn't new. You guys have been supporting this career for a quarter of a century. Thank you.
Here, on behalf of NAMIC, on behalf of NAMIC's leadership, I am truly humbled to have shared this space with you and Charles. This was one of the most uplifting conversations that I've been privileged to hear and be a part of. Continue to do what you do. You are such an authentic leader. I really admire that about you. I remember when I first came to NAMIC and you joined the task force on the AIM Part Diversity Study, and that's how we got connected. And since then, I've just seen your star rise. So keep being a blessing. You are blessed, and keep leading. We're deeply honored to everyone who joined us today. Charles, you were fantastic. Thank you for the work that you're doing, not only here, but with NAMIC Atlanta. And I am deeply honored to have shared this space with you as well. To everybody who joined us, I see the love, I see the high fives. We appreciate you. We look forward to seeing you on another segment of our NAMIC webinars. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. Bye, everyone.